Good morning, everybody. How we doing? This is a real quick video on for Romanticism for John Keats. Typically, he's like the last he's the last romantic poet that we'll look at whenever we cover Romanticism in my classes. He's a good way to end it. I like him. He's something about him that I really liked was the fact of his grasp of the importance of the individual and the imagination and experience, but at the same time, the realistic understanding of how it works with us and what it can do to us and everything like that. So, in this unit, you should see, an introductory video to Keats. Please watch that and pay attention to that because it's very important because he dealt with a lot of tragedy in his life. And I think that has something to do with his approach to imagination. And within that, it's just rampant with Romanticism, okay? And, again, go back to your the first unit on Romanticism and study those key points of Romanticism. Watch those videos, those PowerPoint videos that I have posted. All of that is very important because as you go through and read these, you'll see that just go into reading that with that content in mind. And I've said it before in other videos, and I'll say it, I'll keep saying it, is that you don't want to go to a reading, and that's one of the hardest parts for students when they're like, this doesn't make any sense, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. The problem is you're going into it with no idea what to do. If you just go into a piece, especially older stuff that you have no idea what it's about, old literature, you'll just read it and you'll have no clue where to start, and it makes no sense to you whatsoever. So, what does that mean? What do you do? How do you approach that? You have to go in with a question. You have to have some type of understanding or basic idea of what the topic may be, the thing may be, to look for it, okay? And that's why those study points matter. That's why in these videos, I don't go rambling and reading the poem to you. I don't go deep into pointing things out and telling you, well, this is what this means, this is what that means, you need to look for this and that. What I like to do is I like to give you those themes, give you those ideas, and have you go find them and look at them, because that's what matters. This is not the kind of class to where I'm going to give you the answer and expect you to spit it back out at me. I'm going to give you a focus, and then you're going to go dig, and you're going to find it, you're going to analyze it, and tell us what you see and what you perceive. It's a big exercise for an analysis, personal analysis here. So, with that being said, what we see with Keats, we have a lot of folks dying early in his life when he's a kid and growing up, and then later he falls in love, really doesn't work, it doesn't work the way you would think. You fall in love, you get married, everything's perfect. Everything's hard for him. And one of the reasons why, and off the top of my head, I can't remember, he was very sick. He died very young, in his 20s, I believe. And so he was writing all this prolific poetry as a young man that hasn't had all the experience in the world of someone like Percy Shelley, big romantic, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Wordsworth, people like that, older folks who are just like, experienced so much in the world and everything like that. He was such a young man that died early that was speaking about these very deep experiential points. And one of those is, and we see this with La Madame Sans Merci, is the power of the imagination. And so what we're seeing here is like something like a fairy, a man. You have a conversation in this poem. You have someone walking up and he's saying to the other, man, you're out here naked in the middle of the woods. What the heck is going on? What happened? And so the poem now becomes the man that's naked in the woods, starts to explain what happened. And what we start to go into is he's telling the story of how he ran into this beautiful woman, like a fairy type of woman out here. And everything was wonderful, went to sleep with her, he woke up, and he's been robbed, pretty much. And so what we're seeing here, what matters is, and what you got to look for is like the power of imagination. Because it's some type of like pretty wild stuff that doesn't sound like it's very possible. It's pretty impossible. It's, fantasy here. But a lot of his other poems do this too. They'll focus on the power of imagination. And what he's showing us in a lot of these poems is like, in more than what just this one, is that, especially in life, and life is hard and everything, imagination is a wonderful thing. Imagination is glimpses into your soul, all this stuff he's saying. It's just ways, not just a way to escape, but it's a way to the power of the imagination is the individual. It's something that experience that comes through. It's something that's very important and very powerful. You cannot get rid of it. You cannot deny it. You have to experience it. But he also is very quick in this, and there's another famous one he has called the Eve of St. Agnes, to where it shows that the imagination, it's very powerful, but it's at the same time it can be dangerous. Looking at it, for instance, if you focus too much on that, you deny reality and everything like that, it's not good for you. For instance, no matter how much he wanted to maybe imagine something else, his dad still dies, and and he's still gonna die. And that's something else he definitely sees, is that I can do all this imaginative, all whatever, but I'm still gonna die. I still got some problems that I have to deal with. So you still have to have your feet planted in reality. And I think that's something I really like about him compared to a lot of other, this is me personally, a lot of other romantic poets, is that while he does indulge in a lot of that stuff, he is definitely forcefully grounded in reality. Unlike folks like Percy Shelley, which we didn't get to read, and especially Lord Byron. A lot of these folks who just lived young, wild, I wouldn't say selfish, and not in a negative way, but a selfish life, meaning that it was focused on themselves, their personal experiences, their indulgence, their enjoyment, and everything like that. Lots of drinking, lots of partying, lots of women, all this stuff. They lived life up, and it was all about that experience. They didn't care about anything. They were young anyway, and they just went for that. And Keats didn't really have that luxury. He could enjoy that imagination. He respected it, and he used it in everything he talked about. But he also knew that there's a point when you gotta realize that, this is still imagination. This is still, make believe. So that's very important. The other poem, Ode on Melancholy, that we're doing is very important, and I think this is it's a type of lesson you may have heard, you've talked about many times before, maybe you experienced it, and I wouldn't say it's like that don't know what you got till it's gone kind of thing. But what he's saying is that, how do we know what something is? We know it through experiencing the opposite. So, for instance, how do I know A is good? All right, and then you got B over here. I know A is good in contrast to something that, say, B is bad. So, for instance, how do I know that, let's just say you have somebody who is single. Being single is wonderful. It's better than anything else in the world. I've never been married, but I think, I think that being single is the best thing in the world. Well, how can they really make that decision if they've never experienced being married or with another person? So that's what this is. If you're kind of getting my analogies here, maybe they're not perfect, but what Keats is trying to show us here is Ode to Melancholy. Melancholy means sadness. Everything from sorrow and grief and just despair and sadness. Melancholy. So what he's saying is that I welcome melancholy. I welcome the sadness. I'm happy I have the sadness, because through that sadness, through loss, through depression, through pain, all that stuff, through that is what helps me realize the good, makes me able to identify the good, makes me appreciate the good. I wouldn't know what good is in my life if I didn't have the hard times to make me see the good times. And I kind of see that with my kids. I've told that to my kids before. When me and my wife are talking, and I always say to them, I was like, what y'all need is a one real good hard time is what you need. You need some hard times in your life so you can realize how good you have it. And I think that's something in all of our lives. When we go through hard times, it helps us. We're like, that sucks when you go through it, but later you're glad you went through it. It made you stronger, did all this kind of stuff like that. But it also helps you appreciate what you have, makes you understand, the good, makes you see the good, all that kind of stuff. It's just like having that appreciation thanks to the opposite. You enjoy the good stuff because you had the bad stuff. So Keats is in a way saying, I'm happy with the bad stuff. It sucks, but this is an ode to that, because through that I'm able to enjoy the good. And so it's actually a good thing if you kind of want to say it like that. But that's where we're looking for in these poems. So when you go into Ode Melancholy, the first thing he's saying is like, pretty much, don't kill yourself. Don't go looking for the poisons. All the items he's mentioning in the front end is like poisons, okay? Nightshade, and so on. So he's saying, like, why? Almost like what you see with that expostulation in reply we saw with Wordsworth. he's saying, why? Don't go getting upset and want to kill yourself because everything's so terrible. Look at it as a good thing. You have to see it like through the bad and hard times. It helps you see and appreciate the good. And without this here, you'd never even know the good. You'd never realize that you have something good. And so it's really an uplifting way to look at things, especially coming from a guy who knew he was about to die and everything. So, that's the point to really kind of look into when you're looking into Keats. Very enjoyable readings here. It's not always easy to read. That's something you have to understand. When I say it's enjoyable, it doesn't mean it's going to be a fun, leisurely read. You have to understand their style. You have to appreciate their style. You have to appreciate the style, the language being used. It may be different, but the awesome thing is that you're still dealing with an individual, a human being, and he's experiencing human being feelings. And so he's expressing something in a way that maybe we have experienced but don't know how to express it. So we can relate to that and connect to that in a certain way. So, all right, y'all, there we go. Obviously, as always, if you have any questions with anything, please holler at me and let me know.